Without objection, such will be the order.
Also, there is a letter to the Treasury that he would like entered into the record as well. I'd ask for unanimous consent on that.
Without
also.
objection. Without
Okay.
objection.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this important hearing. And listen, I look at where we are in the country right now, and I'm starting to be able to see some differences between different parts of the country that are opening up and those that aren't. And I look at what's happening here in Georgia, and it's pretty amazing to see the rebound in the economy. I had the pleasure of going out and touring around my district this past week, and one of the cities that I went to see that is completely dependent on tourism told me that the sales tax revenue for their city for the entire year was only off $1,000 for the same period last year, which I think is pretty remarkable. It shows that when the economy opens back up, people can go about their normal business in new ways, and I think that they are doing. I think that what we're seeing here in Georgia is that we are seeing a rebound in the economy. We still have tremendous capacity in our healthcare system to be able to take care of individuals that need to be go into the hospital. And I think what we've done here is we did exactly what we set out to do, which is to bend the infection rate curve down so that we didn't overwhelm the hospital. It's never about stopping the spread of the virus. It was about slowing the spread of the virus. And I think that we've done that. And I'm hats off to America for that. And now I think is the time to smartly reopen this country and return the dignity of work to people's lives. And let's start in a very methodical way, rebuilding this great American economy. So with that being said, I think that there've been some good ideas discussed here. I think that we need to be incredibly innovative with the tax code, not just in the short term, but as we need to look ahead to what our economy will be. I think one of the areas that we can all agree on, we have to protect American intellectual property. And we want to make sure that we recognize that intellectual property is the backbone of future manufacturing. The ideas and the processes that we develop here in America, those are going to lead to the new manufacturing processes, whether it's in biotech, whether it's in genetics, whether it's in traditional manufacturing. So, Mr. Parmelau, the thing that I'd like to ask you is, do you think it would be advantageous for us to consider things in the tax code that would make repatriating intellectual property possible and more advantageous?
Thank you for the question. So I think that this is actually a pretty good tax policy question here. So the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I think, did two things that may impact intellectual property investment. And I think lawmakers might want to revisit both of them at some point in the future, although it may not be appropriate within a pandemic setting. The first is that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act scheduled the treatment of intellectual property investment to go from being expensed, meaning that companies can fully deduct those costs in the first year. And starting in 2021, those would need to be amortized or deducted in stages over a period of 5 years. This was passed. I don't think there was a strong policy justification for it. It was more for raising revenue to offset the cost of the corporate rate reduction. The downside is that it would increase it would reduce the return to intellectual property investment in the United States and reduce the amount that we would have overall in America. So I think that lawmakers should address that if they are concerned about intellectual property investment. The second is the treatment of intellectual property income overseas. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act did change the treatment of IP income through the GILTI, Global Intangible Low Tax Income, and the treatment of IP stashed here, the foreign derived intangible income. Those provisions were meant to kind of level the playing field in terms of taxation of intellectual property products, whether they're placed here or placed abroad. I know that over the past couple of years, we found a lot of bugs in those, and I think lawmakers could begin to address those bugs that may improve the effectiveness of those provisions as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Look, an issue that we talk about an awful lot, and I've really worked on as a lot of members have on both sides of the aisle. And that is access to broadband in our rural communities. I think that we've got a unique opportunity right now to showcase the talent that's in rural America. Look, there's some great advantages to hiring folks that work in rural areas. Problem is that in this economy, they don't have access to broadband. And so I'm thinking about not only how do we expand broadband, and what are the right tax policies needed to help the private sector invest smartly in a much different way in rural broadband, but also, think about, do you have any ideas or any suggestions, or do you think it'd be helpful if you had a tax credit system that favored hiring somebody in a rural community as opposed to an urban community?
The gentleman's time has expired. So, Kyle, if you can get back to Mr. Ferguson in writing on that.